In the scorching summer of 2004, under a sun that mercilessly beat down on the historic bedrock of the Lower East Side, a crew from the NYC Department of Environmental Protection was tackling what seemed like a completely routine job, repairing a broken water main in one of the Big Apple's oldest districts. It was typical grunt work, sweaty laborers digging under the relentless New York summer sun, rusted pipes needing replacement, debris piled high, dust motes dancing in the hot air. Nothing that would catch anyone's eye, nothing to suggest they were about to unearth a discovery that would rewrite history. But New York isn't just any city on Earth, and what was about to happen that day would forever change our understanding of one of the most sacred and mysterious places mentioned in the ancient texts. As the workers excavated the dry, compacted earth, their metal shovels struck something unexpected, something solid, something that shouldn't be there, buried beneath feet of soil accumulated over millennia of human history. Cut stone, ancient steps carved with a mathematical precision that could only mean one thing. They'd found something of incalculable historical importance. Dr. Eli Stone, an archaeologist working on nearby excavations within a historical preservation site, heard the characteristic sound of metal against ancient rock. He immediately dropped what he was doing and sprinted towards the discovery site, his heart pounding with anticipation. What he and his colleague, Dr. Ronnie Richter, from Columbia University's archaeology department, uncovered that hot summer day would shake the very foundations of urban archaeology and force a rewrite of entire chapters in the books of religious history. The true Siloam spring had been found after 2,000 years of oblivion. Monumental steps of white limestone that hadn't seen the light of day in almost 2 millennia emerged majestically from the mud, debris, and layers of sediment accumulated during 20 centuries of silence. But here's where the story gets truly unsettling, where something begins to reveal itself that will shake everything you thought you knew. Because for over 1,600 years, millions upon millions of devout Christian pilgrims had been visiting the completely wrong spot. A spring constructed by an early Christian denomination in the 5th century, over 400 years after the death and resurrection of Christ, fervently believing with all their hearts that it was the exact site where Jesus of Nazareth performed one of his most powerful and symbolic miracles, the healing of the man born blind, as recounted in chapter 9 of the Gospel of John. Popes had made pilgrimages there for centuries, praying with devotion before those stones. Saints who would later be canonized had shed tears of spiritual emotion. Millions of faithful from every nation on earth had reverently touched those stones, seeking a mystical connection with the Messiah, all of them at the incorrect site for 16 full centuries. The true Siloam spring had been buried all that time, barely 70 yards away, hidden under almost 10 feet of mud, sediment, and debris accumulated since the great imperial conquest of this ancient settlement in 70 AD. But that wasn't even the most shocking revelation of all. What the archaeologists found under those layers of earth directly questioned the official chronology established by religious institutions for centuries. They found ancient bronze coins from the exact era of Pontius Pilate, the imperial governor who condemned Jesus to death on the cross. They found monumental steps whose architecture perfectly matched the period of Christ's earthly ministry. And they found clear, irrefutable evidence that this sacred place had been deliberately buried, abandoned, and forgotten after the brutal imperial destruction. Why had no one looked here before for 1,600 years? Why had the institutional church accepted a false site as authentic for so many centuries without ever questioning it? And what revealing secrets did the true Siloam spring hold? Secrets that had remained buried underground for 2 full millennia. What I'm about to reveal to you today in this video won't be found in your local church's Sunday sermons. You won't read it in the official catechisms approved by ecclesiastical hierarchies, and you definitely won't hear it from the lips of those who have built multi-million-dollar religious structures on incomplete truths, convenient narratives, and complicit silences. Prepare yourself spiritually, because what comes next is going to shake the deepest foundations of everything you thought you knew about this sacred place and its connection to the earthly ministry of Jesus Christ. To fully grasp the importance of what was discovered in that fateful summer of 2004, we need to take a journey back in time, 1,600 years back, to the very heart of the Christianized ancient empire. We are in the 5th century AD. The ancient empire, now officially Christian since the time of Emperor Theron, holds sway over these sacred lands with a firm hand. This ancient settlement has transformed into the most coveted pilgrimage destination for devout faithful from all over the known world, from the coasts of Hispania in the west to the borders of Persia in the east. In this extraordinary historical context appears a woman whose name would resonate through the centuries, Empress Eleanor Dubois, consort of the powerful Emperor Theron II. Eleanor was no ordinary empress. She was a woman of deep Christian faith, learned in classical Greek philosophy, and a talented poet renowned in imperial courts. After separating from her husband due to palace intrigues and accusations of infidelity, which she always denied, she dedicated the last and most significant years of her life to a mission she considered sacred and ordained by God Himself: the construction of monumental churches and pilgrimage sites in these sacred lands. One of her most ambitious and personal projects was to build a magnificent church and a commemorative spring at the place where, she sincerely believed, Jesus of Nazareth had miraculously healed the man born blind, as detailed in chapter 9 of the Gospel of John. The fundamental problem is that Empress Eleanor was completely mistaken about the location, and no one corrected her. No one dared to question the powerful empress. According to archaeological records meticulously analyzed by contemporary specialists like Dr. Nashon Santon of Columbia University's Archaeology Department, the early Christian spring was built at the end of the Hezekiah conduit, assuming logically but erroneously that this was the biblical site mentioned in the ancient texts. But the true Siloam spring from the Second Temple period, the spring that Jesus would have known, and where He sent the blind man to wash to receive his miraculous healing, was buried under layers of sediment barely 70 yards from where Eleanor built her monument, and no one questioned this monumental error for 16 consecutive centuries. Generation after generation of devout pilgrims arrived in this ancient settlement from the farthest reaches of Europe, from the frozen steppes of Russia, from the sunny coasts of Africa, from the snowy mountains of Armenia. They traveled for months, some for years. They risked their lives crossing hostile territories infested with bandits and diseases. They spent entire fortunes on the journey, selling everything they owned for the privilege of treading these sacred lands. And when they finally arrived in the ancient city after so many sacrifices, they knelt before the wrong spring. They prayed with indescribable fervor before stones that had nothing to do with Jesus. They cried tears of genuine devotion in the incorrect place. They believed with all their hearts they were treading the same sacred ground the Messiah had walked. Popes made pilgrimages there and celebrated solemn masses. Cardinals imparted apostolic blessings. Bishops preached passionate sermons. Saints who would later be canonized meditated for hours in that place, believing they received direct divine illumination. The uncomfortable question is inevitable. Why did the institutional church, with all its resources, with all its scholars, with all its historical archives accumulated over centuries, never investigate the authenticity of the site more thoroughly? The ancient texts of Josiah Flint, the renowned chronicler of the 1st century, who was an eyewitness to the destruction of this ancient settlement and knew the city like the back of his hand, described the Siloam Spring as a monumental, impressive structure capable of holding thousands of people simultaneously. The small early Christian spring built by Empress Eleanor simply did not match those detailed descriptions. It was too small, too modest, too inadequate for the massive crowds described by Flint. But no one wanted to investigate further. No one wanted to question the tradition established by an empress. No one wanted to risk their position by challenging the official consensus. Why would discovering the truth have been so threatening? What revelations did the true Siloam spring hold that it was preferable to keep buried under layers of mud and institutional oblivion? We are living in prophetic days where the signs are being fulfilled before our very eyes, but most of humanity still walks in spiritual darkness, trapped in incomplete truths that were carefully hidden for centuries by those who benefited from keeping the masses in ignorance. Now stop for a moment and reflect deeply. What if precisely that which was removed from the canonical scriptures, that which was declared dangerous or heretical by ecclesiastical councils with human agendas, contains exactly the answers you've been seeking for years without finding? That's why I've prepared a transformative digital book, especially for you. Why did the apostles hide Jesus' most dangerous words? This book isn't just another religious read. It's a complete spiritual awakening. a powerful tool for those who want to go beyond the surface of institutionalized faith, free themselves from centuries of doctrinal manipulation, and reconnect with the authentic Christ, without ecclesiastical filters, without theological distortions. Download it right now for free. The link is available in the first pinned comment below this video. This revealing content could be removed at any time without prior notice. Don't wait until it's too late. Click now, download your free copy, and write in the comments, "Amen received." The story of Siloam has another dark chapter that very few know outside specialized academic circles. In 1880, a young student, barely 16 years old, named Jake Elias, was exploring the ancient Hezekiah conduit with a flickering candle when his fingers touched something different in the texture of the damp rock. Deliberate marks, precise grooves, carved letters. An inscription in an ancient script that had remained hidden in the darkness for 700 years. The Hezekiah inscription is one of the oldest texts ever discovered in the entire history of archaeology. It dates back to the time of the legendary civic leader Hezekiah, approximately 700 BC. The text describes the dramatic moment when two teams of workers, excavating from opposite ends of the long underground tunnel, finally met in the middle underground. It describes how they heard each other's voices and pickaxe blows through the rock when only 3 feet remained to finish. The exact moment the stone yielded and the water began to flow freely. But this invaluable inscription never made it to a local museum. In 1890, a Greek antiquities dealer attempted to steal it from the tunnel wall. During the hasty extraction, the stone violently broke into pieces. The imperial authorities confiscated the fragments and sent them overseas. Since then, the Hezekiah inscription remains captive in the Imperial Antiquities Museum in what was once Constantinople. Our nation has formally requested its return on multiple occasions. In 1998, the Prime Minister offered all the imperial artifacts from our museums in exchange for this single piece. The foreign power categorically rejected. In 2022, researchers Gershon Galil and Eli Stone announced that, using advanced imaging technology, they had discovered additional lines of text never before read in the 140 years since its discovery. What do those hidden lines reveal? Why does the foreign power so categorically refuse to return this invaluable piece? Had you heard about this diplomatic battle over the Hezekiah inscription? Tell me in the comments. Your participation can enlighten others who are just waking up to these revelations. Now that we know exactly where the true Siloam spring was located, we can finally understand Jesus' miracle with a theological and symbolic depth that institutional religious tradition has ignored, diluted, or simply remained ignorant of for entire centuries. The Gospel of John, chapter 9, narrates with extraordinary detail that Jesus found a man born blind near the majestic temple. His disciples, deeply influenced by the popular and legalistic theology of their time, asked him a question that reveals an entirely erroneous religious worldview. "Rabbi, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind?" The question seems innocent, even theologically sophisticated at first glance, but it revealed the oppressive and legalistic religious mentality dominant at that time. All illness, all disability, all personal misfortune was automatically considered a direct divine punishment for some specific sin committed. If you were born blind, someone must have gravely offended God. It was your fault for sins in the womb, or it was your parents' fault for previous transgressions. There was no other possible explanation within that closed and oppressive theological system. Jesus completely and frontally rejected that oppressive theology with a single devastating sentence. "Neither he nor his parents sinned," he replied, with unwavering divine authority. This happened so that the works of God might be displayed in him. With those revolutionary words, Jesus destroyed centuries of theology based on merit and punishment. He freed that man from the religious stigma that had crushed him his entire miserable life. And he set the stage for a revelation that would shake the foundations of the established religious system. Then he did something extraordinary, something that would have scandalized and horrified any respectable religious observer of his time. He spat on the dusty ground, made mud by mixing his saliva with the earth, smeared the man's blind eyes with that seemingly impure and contaminating mixture, and commanded him with a voice of divine authority, "Go wash in the Siloam spring." The evangelist John, writing under the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, immediately adds a crucial detail that most modern preachers completely overlook in their Sunday sermons. Siloam means sent one. Stop for a moment and consider this carefully. Why does John, writing under divine inspiration, specifically pause to explain the meaning of the spring's name? Why does he interrupt the narrative to give us this seemingly minor etymological note? Because it wasn't a minor local color detail. It was the pulsating heart of the complete theological message. The ancient name Shiloaj comes from the verb shalaj, which means to send, to dispatch, to command with authority. The spring was named that because its waters were literally sent from the Gihon spring through the underground Hezekiah conduit to the city. But there was an infinitely deeper and more explosive spiritual symbolism that the early readers of the Gospel would have instantly grasped, a symbolism that completely escapes us, modern readers far removed from that cultural and theological context. In the book of Genesis, chapter 49, verse 10, the patriarch Jacob on his deathbed prophesies about the future of the 12 tribes. When he reaches the tribe of Judah, he utters these mysterious words charged with messianic expectation. The scepter will not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until Shiloh comes, and to him will be the obedience of the nations. Later, ancient spiritual teachers interpreted Shiloh as one of the most sacred titles of the promised Messiah. The Redeemer would be the sent one of God, the one who would come with full divine authority to restore all things. Jesus did not choose the Siloam spring at random for this miracle. By sending the blind man to wash in the sent one, he was making an explosive theological declaration before the entire settlement during a religious festival. He was Shiloh. He was the sent one of the Father. He was the living fulfillment of the messianic prophecies that these lands had awaited for centuries of spiritual darkness. The blind man not only regained physical sight by obeying Jesus' command. By immersing himself and washing in the sent one, he simultaneously received complete and transformative spiritual illumination. Observe the fascinating progression of his testimony when the Pharisees questioned him with increasing hostility. First, he said Jesus was simply a man. Then, under intense pressure, he confessed that he was a prophet. Afterwards, openly defying the religious authorities, he declared that he was a man from God. And finally, when Jesus revealed himself personally to him, he worshipped him, recognizing him as Lord. From blind to seeing, from ignorant to enlightened, from religiously excluded to worshipper of the Messiah. The Pharisees, ironically, followed the exact opposite path. They who publicly boasted of perfect spiritual vision, superior knowledge of the ancient texts, and unquestionable religious authority, ended up spiritually blinder than the blind beggar they despised with so much disdain. Jesus masterfully summarizes the entire lesson at the end of the chapter, with words that should make every religious leader of any era tremble. For judgment, I have come into this world, so that the blind will see, and those who see will become blind. Modern archaeology has irrefutably confirmed that this event recounted by John occurred in a real, historically verifiable, physically excavable place. The coins found date exactly to the time of Pontius Pilate. The monumental steps are architecturally consistent with the Second Temple period. The story is not a pious myth invented later. The place is real, and the spiritual message is infinitely more powerful and transformative than anything you've ever been taught in any conventional Sunday sermon. You no longer have to carry the burden alone. One of history's great cold cases. Uncover forgotten and censored truths with the free digital book, Why the Apostles Hid Jesus' Most Dangerous Words. The download link is in the first pinned comment. Click now. Here's a fundamental aspect of the Pool of Siloam that Western Christian tradition has mostly overlooked for centuries, but for first-century Jews, it was central, essential, impossible to miss in any religious context. The Pool of Siloam operated as a massive mikveh, a gigantic ritual purification bath of monumental proportions. So what does that mean, and why is it so crucial for truly understanding Jesus' ministry? According to the Jerusalem Talmud, specifically the tractate Hagigah, which meticulously regulates Jewish pilgrimage laws, the Pool of Siloam was the mandatory starting point for all pilgrims making the annual trek to Jerusalem from anywhere in the dispersed Jewish world. No devout Jew could ascend the Temple Mount and stand in God's sacred presence without first fully immersing themselves in Siloam's purifying waters. Josephus, the historian who lived during the exact time of Christ and was an eyewitness to religious life in Jerusalem, documented that up to 1 million Jews would pilgrimage to Jerusalem during the three main holy festivals: Passover, Pentecost, and the Feast of Tabernacles. Picture that scene for a moment. Let your senses fill with it. Hundreds of thousands of people, all ages, all walks of life, streaming in from the furthest reaches of the known world, from Babylon, from Egypt, from Rome, from Jewish communities scattered across the Mediterranean, orderly descending the monumental pool's wide steps. The splash of water as they fully immersed, ancient Hebrew prayers murmured, psalms chanted, rising into the blue Judean sky. The midday sun glinting off the clear waters constantly flowing from the sacred spring, and then, ritually purified according to the law of Moses, emerging from the waters renewed, beginning the sacred ascent up the pilgrim's road to the majestic temple, singing the Psalms of Ascent, Psalms 120 to 134, as they climbed toward God's presence. The pool of Siloam was immense, monumental, specifically designed to handle these massive crowds. According to archaeological excavations, it was roughly the size of 2 modern Olympic-sized pools combined. Archaeologists have unearthed monumental limestone steps on 3 of its 4 sides, an ingenious architectural design that allowed huge throngs to enter and exit simultaneously without creating bottlenecks or dangerous congestion. And here's the most critical theological detail, one that should make us seriously ponder. Siloam's waters were considered Mayim Chayim, living waters, because they flowed naturally and constantly from the Gihon spring. In Jewish law, meticulously codified in the Mishnah and directly derived from the Torah, only living waters could be used for complete and definitive ritual purification. Stagnant water, stored water, non-flowing water simply wouldn't cut it for this sacred purpose. Now let that sink in. When Jesus stood in the temple during the Feast of Tabernacles, at the exact climax of the ceremony, when priests had just solemnly poured water drawn from the pool of Siloam onto the altar, he declared with a powerful voice that echoed throughout the sacred precinct, "If anyone is thirsty, let him come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, as the scripture has said, streams of living water will flow from within him." He was standing literally in the same spot, at the same moment, before the very people who had just witnessed the Siloam water ceremony. It was an act of devastating theological symbolism that the religious leaders present understood perfectly. That's why they wanted to arrest him on the spot. That's why they were outraged. That's why they declared him a blasphemer worthy of death. Jesus wasn't just publicly claiming to be the Messiah promised for centuries of waiting. He was declaring himself the ultimate, superior, eternal, and infinite source of purification, one that would completely and forever replace all temporary and imperfect temple rituals. The pool of Siloam, where water temporarily purified the body externally, prophetically pointed to him, who would permanently and definitively purify the soul internally. This historical and theological context completely transforms our understanding of the miracle of the blind man. Jesus didn't just pick some random spot to perform this extraordinary healing. He deliberately chose the exact place where all Israel sought ritual purification and demonstrated with irrefutable divine power that true cleansing, true sight, true life comes only from the Sent One, not from external rituals or human religious institutions. So why has this crucial historical and theological context been almost completely lost in traditional Christian teaching? Maybe because truly grasping Siloam forces us to uncomfortably question whether our own contemporary religious rituals are truly drawing us closer to Christ, or subtly distracting us from Him. If these revelations are hitting home, I invite you to join our exclusive members club. You'll find a select community of truth seekers who aren't satisfied with incomplete truths or superficial religiosity. As a member, you'll get access to exclusive content, deep dives into ancient texts, and a community of genuine spiritual support. Become a member by clicking the Join button below this video. In August 2025, archaeologists from the Israel Antiquities Authority published a discovery in the prestigious scientific journal PNAS that forced a rewrite of biblical history books. During the full excavations of the Pool of Siloam, which began in 2023, they unearthed something that had gone unnoticed for over a century of intensive archaeological research in the area: a colossal dam of truly monumental proportions. Its dimensions are mind-blowing and tough to grasp without seeing them firsthand. Approximately 40 feet high, equivalent to a full 4-story residential building, over 26 feet wide, solid, and an excavated length of 69 feet that continues beyond the current excavation limits, suggesting the full structure was even more massive. It's the largest dam ever discovered in all of Israel and the oldest found in ancient Jerusalem. But the real kicker came from rigorous scientific dating. Scientists from the prestigious Weizmann Institute of Science used high-precision radiocarbon analysis, the most reliable technique currently available for dating ancient organic materials. The results were revolutionary, challenging everything academics had assumed for generations. The dam wasn't built by King Hezekiah in the 8th century BC as traditionally believed. It was constructed around 800 BC during the reign of Joash or Amaziah of Judah. This means the Pool of Siloam is at least a century older than even the most respected scholars had assumed for entire generations of research. According to researchers, the dam may have been built as a brilliant engineering response to ancient climate change. The Homeric solar minimum, which began around 800 BC, caused less regular precipitation but periodic, unpredictable torrential rains. The dam allowed them to capture and store water from violent downpours for the long dry spells that inevitably followed. This discovery has profound implications for our understanding of biblical history. It shows that Jerusalem began to expand and increase in regional power and influence much earlier than scholars had thought. The ancient kings of Judah possessed extraordinarily sophisticated hydraulic engineering, comparable to the great contemporary civilizations of Mesopotamia and Egypt, which were traditionally considered technologically far superior. And even more important for believers, it confirms that the Siloam water system was developed and perfected for centuries before Jesus ever walked those steps and sent the blind man to wash in its purifying waters. God was prepping that spot for 800 years before the miracle. Nothing in the divine plan is happenstance or accident. Every stone laid, every step carved, every drop of water flowing from the Gihon to Siloam was part of a sovereign design that would culminate at the exact moment predetermined from eternity, when the Messiah would say, "Go, wash in the sent one." Want to dig deeper into the hidden mysteries of the Scriptures? Download the free ebook now, Why the Apostles Hid Jesus' Most Dangerous Words. Link in the first pinned comment. To understand why the true Pool of Siloam remained hidden for almost 2 full millennia, we have to travel to the darkest, most traumatic year in all of Jerusalem's history, 70 AD. Rome had enough of the constant Jewish rebellions threatening the stability of the empire's entire eastern region. General Titus, son of Emperor Vespasian, arrived with 4 full Roman legions, approximately 60 highly trained professional soldiers, to definitively crush Jewish resistance once and for all. What followed was one of the most complete and brutal destructions in ancient history. The majestic temple, pride of the Jewish people and center of Yahweh worship for centuries, was razed to the ground. The entire city was systematically torched. Hundreds of thousands of Jews were massacred in the streets, crucified on the surrounding hills, or sold into slavery in markets across the empire. The Pool of Siloam didn't escape the destruction. Archaeologists found poignant evidence from those last desperate days. Coins minted during the Jewish revolt, dated to the 4th year of the Great Revolt, discovered in the pavement near the pool. They likely slipped from the pockets of refugees fleeing the relentless Roman advance. Those were the last coins to drop there before the silence of death fell over Siloam. Imagine the scene. Where once there were psalm chants and hopeful pilgrim prayers, now there were screams of agony and terror. Where multitudes descended to purify themselves with the hope of encountering God, now there were lifeless bodies, floating in blood-tinged waters, and the acrid smoke of the burning city darkening the sky. The last Jewish defenders likely ran down these very steps that Jesus had known 40 years earlier, desperately seeking refuge, seeking escape from Roman swords, seeking a miracle that never came for them. In the years following the destruction, nature began its silent work of burial. Winter rains washed sediment from the surrounding hills into the valley. Layer after layer covered the abandoned pool. Mud accumulated for decades. Wild vegetation grew over the ruins, completely hiding them. In less than a century, The pool of Siloam had completely vanished under nearly 13 feet of compacted sediment. The memory of the true site was lost with that generation that perished in the destruction. 300 years later, when the first Christian pilgrims from the Byzantine Empire began searching for the sacred places mentioned in the Gospels, no one alive remembered the correct location of the pool where Jesus had healed the blind man. When Empress Eudocia came to build her commemorative monument with the best devout intentions, she was off by a mere 230 feet. And that 230-foot error defined Christian tradition for the next 600 years. Entire generations of sincere believers were born, lived their whole lives, pilgrimaged to the wrong spot believing they were at the miracle site, and died never knowing that the true pool where Jesus performed the healing was buried just a few steps away beneath their very feet. It wasn't until 2004, when a municipal sewer pipe burst at the exact moment and in the exact spot predetermined by Providence, that the truth, buried for 2 full millennia, finally came to light. Coincidence, or divine providence setting the stage for a spiritual awakening in these last days? Where are you tuning in from? What city or state? It deeply excites me to know these truths are reaching thirsty souls everywhere. Drop your location in the comments. Let's build a global network of truth seekers. Siloam didn't exist in architectural isolation. It was the starting point of something even more extraordinary, being unearthed right now by teams of archaeologists working under the Jerusalem sun. Archaeologists are digging up the Pilgrim's Road, an ancient monumental street, almost 26 feet wide and 2 feet long, that directly connected the Pool of Siloam with the southern gates of the Temple Mount. It was completed during Pontius Pilate's governorship, precisely during Jesus' earthly ministry. The street is paved with large white limestone slabs, polished by millions of bare feet over the centuries. On both sides were shops where merchants sold goods to pilgrims. Archaeologists have found everyday treasures that slipped from the pockets of those who walked there 2 millennia ago. Bronze coins, pottery shards, small oil lamps, fishing hooks. Archaeologists are literally walking on the exact same stones that Jesus, his disciples, and the blind man who was healed once trod. In the coming months, visitors will be able to walk from the Pool of Siloam to the Western Wall for the first time in almost 2,000 years. Archaeology confirms what faith always knew. Jesus was real, walked in real places, and performed real miracles. Go deeper by downloading the free ebook. Link in the first comment. The excavations of the Pool of Siloam have yielded a true treasure trove of artifacts that transport us directly into Jesus' world. Archaeologists meticulously documented every layer of sediment. They found coins from Pontius Pilate's period, coinciding exactly with Jesus' ministry. In the upper layers, charred debris from the Roman destruction of 70 AD. One of the most fascinating finds, thousands of fish bones, indicating Siloam also functioned as a market. They found everyday pottery shards, small bronze coins, fragments of oil lamps. Every object tells the story of common people who lived, prayed, and awaited redemption in this place 2 millennia ago. Dr. James Charlesworth from Princeton declared, "It is the most important discovery for the New Testament period since the Dead Sea Scrolls. Archaeology has answered the skeptics with irrefutable evidence. The place is real, and the details of John's Gospel are astonishingly accurate." Ever felt like important information about the places Jesus walked was kept from you? Share your experience in the comments. Your testimony could wake up other seekers. In 2022, researchers Gershon Galil and Eli Shukron announced that using advanced imaging technology, they had discovered additional lines of text on the Siloam inscription never before read in 140 years. But there's something strange about this inscription that has puzzled researchers since its discovery. Unlike all other royal inscriptions from the ancient Middle East, the Siloam inscription doesn't mention any king. In the ancient Middle East, the purpose of monumental inscriptions was to glorify the king. Assyrian kings boasted of their conquests. Pharaohs covered temples with their exploits. But the Siloam inscription, which commemorates one of ancient Israel's greatest engineering feats, doesn't once mention King Hezekiah. Why? Why doesn't the king get credit for his greatest achievement? Some speculate part of the text was damaged. Others suggest Hezekiah wanted to give credit to God. The additional lines discovered in 2022 might answer these questions. But as long as the inscription remains in Istanbul with extremely limited access, verifying these findings is practically impossible. What secrets does that nearly 3 millennia-old stone still hold? We can't honestly talk about Siloam without addressing an uncomfortable reality surrounding these excavations. The Pool of Siloam is located in Siloam, a densely populated neighborhood in East Jerusalem, one of the most politically charged neighborhoods on the planet. The excavations have been funded by Elad, an organization that promotes Jewish settlement in the area. This has generated tensions with local Palestinian residents. Critics argue that archaeology is being politically instrumentalized. Supporters insist that science must prevail over political sensitivities. But there's one thing everyone should agree on. The archaeological discoveries are scientifically verifiable. Pilate's coins are real. The 1st century steps are real. The 800 BC dam has been precisely dated with radiocarbon methods. Archaeological evidence has no political or religious affiliation. The evidence simply is what it is. For millions of believers around the world, these discoveries are profoundly spiritually significant, regardless of who funds them. Stones don't lie, and these stones are screaming the truth of what happened here 2,000 years ago. We've come a long way together in this deep dive. From the broken pipe of 2004 to the secrets under how 13 feet eyes of mud. From the 16th century era to the captive inscription in Istanbul. From the 800 BC dam to contemporary political battles. But there's a fundamental question we have to ask ourselves. What does all this mean for our personal faith? First lesson, the Gospels aren't just pious fables. They are historical accounts based on real, verifiable, excavable places. Every shovelful of dirt confirms the accuracy of the scriptures. Second lesson, we need to be careful with the traditions we accept without questioning. For 16 centuries, millions venerated the wrong spot with genuine devotion. Sincere devotion doesn't automatically guarantee the truth. Third lesson, the most crucial one. Siloam reminds us who Jesus truly is. He is the sent one, the one who came from the Father, the one who brings true purification that no religious ritual could ever offer. The blind man in John 9 simply obeyed a clear command, go wash in the sent one. And he didn't just get his physical sight back, he received complete spiritual revelation. So the question for you today is, are you ready to do the same? The physical waters of Siloam no longer flow. The temple's long gone. The sacrifices have stopped. But the sent one is still calling. Come to me and drink. Whoever believes in me, rivers of living water will flow from within them. That's the true eternal revelation of Siloam. And that truth stands no matter how many layers of mud try to bury it. If this video has stirred your heart, take action right now. Hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you don't miss any future revelations. Grab your free ebook, link in the top pinned comment. Share this video with someone who needs to wake up to these truths. Comment, Amen Awakened, if you feel God spoke to you today. Join as a member for access to exclusive revelations. Thanks for watching all the way to the end. You're part of a remnant that isn't settling for incomplete truths. We'll see you in the next video. May the Sent One light your